Okay, so good evening. My name is Chris Ramsaroop. I am an organizer with Justicia for Migrant Workers, and I'm also involved with the Asian Canadian Labour Alliance.
And how did you get involved in labor organizing?
So I was active at, University of Toronto. I was involved in student activism. I did a lot of stuff on tuition fees, on protesting against injustice, and I believe that universities were a place to transform society, right, and always to work in partnership with communities. So through that, I got involved in the labor movement. There was an internship program with the CLC called the Canadian Labour Congress, and I got involved with that. And my first, internship was working with, the Garment Workers Unite. I did a few days there. And then through that, I got involved in the United Farm Workers of America, which is a union that deals mostly with workers in California and throughout the West Coast. And so I did a lot of stuff United States based. But I guess in Canada, things really changed after 2001 when we started working with migrant workers in places like called Leamington and all across Ontario.
And what inspired you to get involved in the movement?
There's a couple things. So I guess it's got to be family. And my grandmother was a sugarcane worker in Trinidad. She was somebody who raised her kids all by herself, and my mom was also a single parent. And for me, those are important because, there's the obstacles that they face on a daily basis. Definitely you could see now, just thinking back, that something was fundamentally wrong about society. And something's fundamentally wrong when some people have to work and they can't eat. And for me, I thought that was something that needed to be redressed. And it might sound cheesy, but when I was a kid, I promised myself if I saw anything that looked like slavery and indentureship, that I would want to do something to fight it. And when I looked in the fields of Ontario and I saw what was going on with farm workers, this is something we couldn't turn our back on, right? So even after we needed to leave the labor movement to do our own thing as a community organizing and the community organizers, we couldn't turn our back. We wanted to fight for change.
And can you share a story or an instance of labor organizing that you've done involving the South Asian community?
So I think our organizing has always been multiracial, and the reason why it's multiracial is to fight the divide and rule that bosses and the government use when they try to pit Indo-Caribbean workers against South Asian workers, against African workers, against Caribbean workers, against Latin American and Mexican and Thai and Filipinos. So, we've always tried to bring workers together, and I think just the incident of watching multiracial organizing happen is always, I think, one of the most powerful things, and watching people, across linguistic or racial or gender come together to fight for a common cause. And for me, I guess the pilgrimage, the march that we did was a 12-hour march, and we saw Indo-Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean workers, as well as Filipino and Thai workers take a lead and undertake that was an amazing action, right, on so many different levels. So for me, that was important. And also, I guess when I'm thinking historically, I think about the work of the Canadian Farm Workers Union, and that's extremely important inspiration for myself and for what they did, just building power. And I guess just the last thing that I wanted to share when I was thinking about this question, when in our this type of organizing we do, I guess we see more sad stories and more tragedies than anything. And the tragedies I'm talking about when workers have to go home because of immigration status, or they're going home because they're injured and they can no longer work in Canada. And the many times that we see or go to see workers off, and I'm thinking about the several Indo-Caribbean workers that have been at the airport and been injured and who would never come back to Canada. Because of injuries sustained here, and just knowing that we're, I guess, the last people that we'll ever see here, right? So that for me has always left a large, it's a large memory, that large memorable moment for me of sadness, knowing that this is happening, but also this resilience that even though that they've been discarded by their employers, that they're willing to fight, right? They're willing to fight to get their compensation benefits to ensure that this doesn't happen again, and just watching that people in their most toughest period, right, of economic loss, of losing their, because it's mostly men, their masculinity, right, this ability to provide for their families, but knowing that there's also resilience and resistance to fight for justice has been probably the most awe-inspiring thing that I've seen.
And why do you think it's important to document the stories and histories of South Asians in Canada, and what impact does the Komogado Maru have on our lives right now, 98 years onwards?
All right, so just a little kind of blurbs, or forget what it is. I don't know the right way to say it, but so CASA and ACLA, the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians and the Asian Canadian Labour Alliance, we did an event together at the Ontario Federation of Labour convention, and it was amazing watching these group of workers come together with these critical, like, important stories, right, of, you know, resistance on the job, of settling, trying to build family and community here, and these are stories that are not being told anywhere, right, and the biggest fear is that these stories will be erased and lost. And we think of ourselves as people who've come to Canada post 1965, where they supposedly opened up the floodgates to us immigrants or our racialized communities. But for over 100 and some odd years, you know, we've resisted, we have fought, we've built organizations like the Gather Party and other forms of agricultural workers, sawmill workers, domestic workers, organizing. And you know, as I get older and as I read about this type of stuff, I learn so much, right? And we're still in a process of learning from those forms of resistance. And we celebrate our struggles, we celebrate what we've accomplished, but we celebrate our forms of resistance. And I think a lot of times we're stuck in a wheel where we're making and repeating the mistakes with not knowing what the people have done us before. So it's learning their lessons, but also honoring the work that they've done to build what we have today. And our voices can't be lost in this, and that's why this is so important.
Thank you so much.